Alright, time to talk about the game I spent most of my 2022 playing. Like, a lot. MultiVersus is currently in its open beta, and it's being developed by Player First Games. I actually have some history with this game. I saw its initial release trailer back in late 2021, and I was really intrigued by it. Not because of its crossplay, or the roster, or how they got iconic voice actors to reprise their roles, or its gameplay, or even the fact that it was free to play. All that was pretty cool, but my main takeaway from that trailer was the fact that Adventure Time characters were going to be in a platform fighter, and that made me extremely happy. Then after a few months, I completely forgot about the game until one of my mutuals let me and a friend have an additional playtester code for the game's first tech test, and when I tell you that was the most fun me and my friends had playing a fighting game, I really mean it. In fact, that was the game that actually ended up convincing me and my friends to create our own gaming channel. So it kinda hurt when the first tech test was over, and such we were left with a MultiVersus shade pull in our hearts. Thankfully in May, they opened their closed alpha, and what was even more hype was the amazing animated trailer showing off its charm, and ending with the announcement of an open beta coming in July, which was also perfect timing since they had their own dedicated panel at Comic-Con, which gave them even more publicity. So with the amount of hype behind this game, if Warner Brothers and Player First Games played their cards right, this could have been looking to be one of the most played platform fighters ever made. And at first, it definitely was, but recently, MultiVersus has been more openly criticized by the mass public. So what happened? I should preface by saying that this is a live service game. Like, at the time I was writing notes for this video, MultiVersus was finishing its second season, so there is a possibility that any issues I mention in this segment could be fixed when the game fully drops in 2024. So with that said, let's talk about what MultiVersus does right, what it does wrong, and what it could do to improve. Starting off with the current roster, and it's pretty good. I like that there's a good balance between different WB properties in terms of its characters. You got some Looney Tunes characters, DC characters, Cartoon Network characters, Hanna-Barbera characters, even some pretty off-the-wall pigs like Iron Giant and Gizmo's Shred from the Gremlins, which many people know for their iconic movies, but most of the population wouldn't think about having them in a fighting game of all things. But I appreciate how far MultiVersus is willing to reach out in terms of its characters. Honestly, considering how many IPs Warner Bros. Has in their disposal, the roster for MultiVersus could end up becoming a massive thing in the future. Also, one thing that I really love about the characters are their skins. They look really cool. However, that's where my problems with the game start arising. Problem number one, unbalanced skin and prices. Now, like I mentioned at the start of this segment, MultiVersus is a free-to-play live service game, so of course they gotta earn money somehow, and that's where Gleanium comes into play. To explain, Gleanium is basically this game's version of V-Bucks, but unlike V-Bucks, which you can earn by simply playing the game or earning it through the battle pass or buying them directly, MultiVersus does the latter, and in hindsight, that is pretty scummy. And it doesn't help with the fact that skins themselves have some pretty unbalanced prices. For example, let's take a look at an uncommon skin, a rare skin, and a legendary skin. Here we have the President Morty skin, which has a completely different outfit as well as custom animations. He costs $5. Then we have the referee skin for Marvin, whose costume is very noticeable with no custom animations. He costs $10. And finally we have the animated series Batman skin, which has no custom animations, no custom voice lines. It's just the skin. So why the fuck is he worth $20? Now to be fair, I can't really blame Player First Games too much for the pricing since I'm guessing that department is mainly WB's job, but still the pricing at times can be very absurd. But back at the positives for a second, I absolutely adore the way this game looks. Each character looks amazing, and compared to other platform fighters, I think this game does a great job transferring some of its 2D characters into 3D, and that's mainly thanks to the amazing art style of the game. The best way I could describe it is that it feels like you're fighting in a cartoon, and dog, don't even get me started on the stages. Each of them have a lot of detail and fun Easter eggs in the background, and the music of the stages are actually really damn good. As for its gameplay, that was mainly the driving force that kept me coming back to the game, and for the most part, it's still really good. The game's characters are divided into 5 categories. The Bruiser, which is this game's version of an all-rounder. The Support, which focuses on aiding your teammate, but they end up being weaker fighters. The Assassins, whose mainly focus is having fast-paced movement, but are significantly weaker than the Bruiser. On the opposite side of the spectrum, however, we have the Tanks, who are stronger but have a limit to their movement, and finally you have the Mage, who mainly focuses on projectiles. But for the combat itself, the game's driving force that makes it more unique is it practically encourages the player to play 2v2s more than typical 1v1s or free-for-alls, and that's reflected through the character's movesets. I also find it very interesting that the game doesn't really have a block button. Instead, we have a dodging feature. But by far its most unique implementation has to be the attack decay. Let's face it, we all know that one fighting game with that one character that's incredibly broken. But with MultiVersus, they make sure you won't spam attacks too often, or the attack decay sign will appear on the character, meaning that if you keep spamming that same move, it will become weaker and won't have as much knockback, which is pretty smart. It encourages the player to try out its combos. As for the negatives of this gameplay, problem 2, unbalanced balanced characters. This one's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of the characters in this game are pretty unbalanced, whether that's talking about how strong or weak the characters are, or their inconsistent hitboxes. I will give them this, however, they were actively trying to iron out hitboxes before the game went on hiatus. Unfortunately, I can't really see the same for the character balances. Here's a basic rundown of how character balancing worked in this game. There's a character that ended up being way too powerful, then a bunch of people complained about it, then they nerfed the ever-loving hell out of the character to the point they're unplayable, then people complain about that too, then they buff the character to a state that they're playable until the next patch where they make a singular change that can make them overpowered or useless, then the cycle goes back to where it started. At the current state of the game, Finn is dominating 2v2s and 1v1s, where practically everybody agrees he's the best character in the game. And then we have characters that have their significant main ability be nerfed so badly that it feels like you're already lost before starting the match. This specific problem happened in development in the last patch of the game, but Stripe has been having this issue for a while. Oh yeah, I also forgot that this game has a perk system, but honestly I forgot about them to the point that I didn't even write them in the original script. But yeah, this game has perks, and outside of some signature perks, there aren't anything special really. But going back to the gameplay, let's talk about game modes. There's 1v1, 2v2s, and free-for-all modes. There's also a dedicated training mode called the Lab, and I mean, it's a training mode, so there's not much to say there. And finally, we have an arcade mode, which is pretty bare bones all things considered, but hey, at least it somewhat has an arcade mini-boss and final boss. Even though they're just skin-swapped characters that are big, at least I have to commend their attempt. My only problem with these modes, however, is how little EXP, coins, or holiday themed rewards you can get by playing them. Actually, on that note, I want to ask you something. I knew the hype around this game started to die down around its Halloween event, but for those who were never in the community, how many of you knew that it had a Christmas-related event? Or that it had a Chinese New Year event? Or a Valentine's Day event? I'm willing to bet that not many of you didn't know. Which leads me to my biggest gripe with MultiVersus and why I believe it failed to live up to the hype. Problem number 3, the lack of communication and marketing. Now I'm willing to give credit where credit's due. Player First Game has been incredibly open to its player base around the time the game released, but then around November they just kind of stopped altogether, other than to announce the holiday events and small patches, but other than that it's been radio silent. And I'm all for letting them keep their heads down and work on what they have to, like let them cook and shit, but remember that this is a live service game, and with no new content in the span of 2 months, that's obviously gonna make some people, especially the fan base of the game, feel left in the dark of what to expect next. While I really wasn't a fan of how they handled their roadmap in Season 1, I can at least give them credit because they showed what to expect, but we didn't get that in Season 2. To me, it feels like Season 2 is more of a fixing internal problems holding the game back type of season, and if that's the case, then explaining that to your player base should be priority number 1. However, I'm not putting any of the blame towards Player First Games. From the tweets I've seen of people working on the game, they have nothing but love for the game and want to talk about the game, but just can't. Instead, I'm putting the blame on Warner Brothers' bare minimum attempt to market the game, because they've reached the point where I've seen this game trend more because of this game's community giving it publicity better than WB itself. But that's just what I think. Let's see what someone else has to say about the game.
MultiVersus is a game that is free to play that features voice acting, which Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl lacked at launch. The developers of MultiVersus clearly were given more freedom from Warner Brothers than Nick gave All-Star Brawl's team. I had the privilege of getting added to the closed beta by fellow Vibes crew member Dapper's Pad, who got selected for it. In addition to him, my friend Ramen got selected as well. Both of them invited other online mutual friends to the beta, including Manuel D, the person who invited me to be in this video, and we all had a lot of fun playing it.
I don't want to be known as that one guy who's playing with a Tasmate, bro. That's embarrassing.
Look at that, unbreakable ass tornado. Who would have thought?
I have a tornado perk too, so...
At least he's honest. At least he's honest about being full of shit.
I remember the closed beta very fondly. It was neat seeing a game that celebrated Warner Brothers history. I don't have any footage of that to show since there was an NDA. I remember there was text saying property of WB all over it. But luckily I was able to play the closed alpha, which has no NDA, and I have footage from that. The game at the time had everything I wanted from Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, a great roster of iconic characters, voice acting at launch, and dependable online, at least for me anyway. Some of my friends have experienced lag in their games they've played with me, but I had no issues myself. The game has a roster full of recognizable characters from the Warner Brothers catalog. There are Cartoon Network characters, Looney Tunes characters, and Scooby-Doo characters that need no introduction if you're an animation fan. There are also some surprise additions like Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, a HBO show targeted towards an adult audience. Oh yeah, I forgot the other two characters they added later on to the game from a popular Adult Swim show with a creator we don't talk about.
Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty, Rick, 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 Rick and Morty, Rick.
I found the detail of including adult franchises in this fighting game very interesting. The game was non-stop fun, and at the time I really enjoyed it. The devs of the game pushed for teamwork in MultiVersus and designed the game with that element in mind. This is further explored with Bruiser, Support, Assassin, and Mage type characters, which are all great options for teamwork. Another detail I liked was that there was a level up system with each character, and there are perks you can unlock. There is also a way to unlock characters with coins you earn after each battle, which was easy with the closed alpha. However, as much as I enjoyed the game in its beta state, I slowly lost interest in the game as coins became more of a grind to get. It was really fun to play with friends, don't get me wrong, and the new additional characters look cool, but the issue was the grind to get coins prevented me from unlocking the characters. Honestly, looking back, having it free to play in my opinion was a mistake on WB's part, since something as simple as DLC would be a great way to profit while having a decent base roster. However, WB Games decided to go the Fortnite approach with a battle pass for cosmetics. Things like skins and announcer voices that were earnable in the closed beta ended up costing Lemium, which was a big letdown for me, but it's expected given this game was free to play. By was free to play, I mean that the game is not playable at the moment. At least online. The game's developers ended up deciding to make the game no longer playable till 2024, unfortunately. It went offline in June 2023, and fans in the Discord, as you can see, did not take it well. Hopefully, when the game returns, it will be fun again, and the grind for coins will be more easy. I honestly lost interest in the game, but I hope it gets better once it comes back. Thanks, Manuel D, for letting me be in this video. Also, Walter White needs to be in MultiVersus. Put him in the game. Bye.
Overall, I have a lot more to say about this game, but I'm not going to because of time reasons. In all honesty, this entire segment could have been its own video if I wanted it to. We haven't received too many news of this game since it went on hiatus, but hopefully it managed to blow the beta out of the water and a lot of the issues I mentioned before. This game has tons of untapped potential, and it would really suck for it to fumble. I love this game with all my heart, but they really gotta step up their game. Also, fuck you if you're a Superman main.